guys, thanks for tuning back into another video. We've escaped you again. It's been a few weeks since the last upload, and there's been a lot that's transpired on the little Civic. So the budget B18 eBay turbo car is nearing completion, and I want to catch you up. So let's go ahead and roll the intro and get this party started. So boys and girls, in lieu of trying to get you guys caught up to speed here, I'm just going to kind of insert a lot of the clips that I took while I was working as I talk, and hopefully you get something out of it, because there's been a lot that's transpired since the last time we talked. I believe I left you guys off with a couple broken bolts, and it's really progressed a lot since then. So let's go ahead and roll right into it, and I'll turn the camera around and we'll just march. This is the current state, guys. So the car right now has stock suspension back underneath the front. It's missing the axles. It's missing the shift linkage. The motor is in the car. It does run, as you saw in the beginning. It's stitched up. It needs fluids in the trans. It needs coolant. It also needs the rear engine mount bolts finessed, along with a half shaft whenever the axles go in. And we've got a couple items here that are going to go in the shift linkage part to help us out. So I'm just going to kind of walk right through it, and we'll go from there. So the good thing about these eBay kits is you get 99% of what you're supposed to have, and then with the use of your imagination and a little bit of creative skill, you can, manipulate it into what the outcome should be. It's not exactly straightforward, and it doesn't come with instructions, so you kind of have to use that imagination to really kind of get through it. As you can see here, everything's bolted up in the car. The turbo manifold now is on the car. We've got a dump tube, the wastegate's in its final home, turbo is everything's plumbed, oil line, the whole shooting match. So our buddies down at Infamous, FabMD, took care of us with the re-weld of the downpipe. This eBay kit actually cants the exhaust straight forward. So you would have kind of like a snorkel, but in retrospect, that's not what you want. But in theory, it would allow you on certain chassis to be able to start the car. I've seen this in a couple other pictures, but realistically, you've got to do some work here. So everything's stitched up. The bolt-on turbo kit side of things didn't necessarily bolt in the fashion that it should have with the compressor over on this side. So with our orientation, we had to really redo some of the piping. With the intercooler piping itself, the way it's situated, you get two pieces for your hot side. The pieces have to be trimmed a little bit. So you can see at the tip of my finger here, this coupler, I actually cut the pipe based off of where I needed it after I clocked the compressor housing. And I also did that right before I built the oil line. So the kit came with two 45s, a straight, and then a fitting to be able to turn your flange here into an AN style fitting. So if I can get the camera in here to where you can see it a little bit better, I wanted the piping here for the hot side to be routed first, so that way I could bend this line around it and kind of do one after the other. This worked out in my favor because I was able to use the 45 up top and the 45 at the pan, and I didn't really need a lot of line, and it all still travels downhill. Prior to that, though, the exhaust manifold stud kit that I was waiting on, I had to have this bolt extracted, and then the rest of the studs that went in, they actually weren't that great. I've got a few of these somewhere here, and I'll show you. What really happens is they're not strong material. They're literally an eBay exhaust stud. The brand 1320 that I actually bought, the intake manifold studs, they were much better quality. These in particular don't have a little insert on either side, so you're forced to actually have to thread them in the same fashion you remove them by locking out the nuts, which, as cheap as these were, it didn't actually hurt the thread, which was one of my concerns. But at the same time, the threads themselves, as you would try to torque the manifold nuts down, I'll show you here as I talk. With all of the turbo stuff actually being plugged up, plumbed, and everything, it allowed me to go ahead and kind of put the intercooler where it needed to be. So it actually sits right behind the crash bar. So I've got some of these little brackets that are just like little L brackets. We're going to we're going to attach that to the back of the crash bar and then utilize it for the intercooler. So in probably episode 5, whenever this car is getting ready to go to the dyno, which is very close, probably within a week, I'll kind of walk through some of the final pieces and show you some of the clips of what I did. Or if you're doing this, feel free to shoot me a message on social media and I'll kind of coach you with what I did. It may not necessarily work for you, but there might be a different method that, you can kind of tweak. But with that being said, the intercooler is ready to be bolted on. The blow-off valve flange was different than what we actually got with the kit. It came with a Type S. The piping was flanged for an HKS, the big circle. So I've got a couple clips here I'll bounce in and out. But pesky snap ring, we achieved it, or we completed it, and it's now in. So the recipe for success is really in the tools that you have. If you've got a cheap set of snap ring pliers or interchangeable heads or something that's designed for like light duty work, it's not going to work out in your favor and it's going to keep slipping off and you could potentially hurt yourself. But if you get a nice sturdy set of pliers, piece of cake. It was like it was meant to be. So, quit hoofing it and just spend a little money and it usually pays off. So guys, right before the first startup, I had to plumb everything from the fuel line, the regulator. We ended up, because of the way that this fuel rail is from an A1, the fuel filter is no longer on the firewall. He's sitting, directly behind this piping because of the routing of this. The fuel injectors, I sprung a leak here on this one. And because of that, I had to get a new O-ring. All of it's now situated. This car being an OBD2 car, the IAT sensor is actually over there on the harness, over there. So that's got to be rewired once we get to that point with the dyno and the ECU. Right now, I have no clue, based off the base map, because everything's turned off, what's actually plugged in and what's not. So we got a little bit of investigating to do there. Right now, the car starts, it runs as you saw. A few final touches underneath and we should be in business. The dump tube itself was kind of a creation that was my first little test run. So I built this out of a piece of conduit, 1.25 inch conduit, and it's pre-bent and then I guess MIG welded. I tried to MIG weld it and it holds. At that point, we've really got, minimal stuff. And then we can actually move on to the fun stuff. So over here, part of the fun stuff, we've got billet bushings to go in the shifter. I don't know if I showed you this, guys, earlier, but I got some nice steel lug nuts so the aluminum ones don't bust off anymore. We've also got the wideband, which you saw the sensor, but we've got to put the gauge on the inside and wire it in. And then we've got a few other little details here. So this is the fuel pump kit. So we'll put it in, and then we've got a window regulator for the passenger side, and we should be ready to go. The car still needs a windshield, so we've got to get that done here towards the end, and then we'll be ready for the dyno. So the wastegate spring is an 8-pound spring. Motor seems healthy. It's got a 4-port. It's got 450cc injectors. It's going to be on 93 non-ethanol fuel, and we're going to send it. So we'll see how it goes and kind of start out like we always do and then determine it based off of how healthy she is, or it is. At that point, we'll dial in all the little, finishing touches and it'll be ready for a new home. So